Hello my dudes, this is Kadima with another build video for Lords of the Fallen. This time probably with the worst build that I created so far, simply because strength builds are not that good in this game. And I'm going to show exactly why. Pure strength builds just do not work. So if you are ever considering using a pure strength build, I would strongly advise you straight away not to do so, because they have a lot of weaknesses and there's no way to go around them if you are going for pure strength, especially when it comes to PvP. Now, this is by far one of the strongest pure builds you can come up with. The reason being that I am using the one weapon in the game that scales the most with strength, which is the Iron Wayfarer Hammer. It scales S once upgraded all the way to plus 10, which, as you can see below, at 75 strength, it gives you an attack power of 112. This is mostly physical damage with a sprinkle of holy fire and wither damage. Now, as for the requirements, unfortunately, I can't show them because I've got the crafter's essence on the hammers, and that kind of just ignores the requirements and the weight of the weapons that they are slotted into, and I've got one on each of the hammers. But unfortunately, I will talk about what problems I found when coming up with the right runes to use for this build, and you will understand the same way that I did, that there's a massive flaw design with some of the runes in the game, and I'm going to explore that with you in a minute. Now, I'm using and dual wielding two Iron Wayfarer hammers simply because I now have access to two Grayson's rings, and these stack, and they both just basically say that you deal additional damage when dual wielding weapons. The Warrior's Claw is the pendant of choice, increases physical damage and physical defense. The armor is entirely up to you. I like to rock this combination of pieces: the Neophyte's Hood, the Sovereign Protector, Holy Bulwark Gauntlets, and Crimson Rector Leggings. Now, for my Catalyst, I'm using the Wheelmark's Catalyst at plus 10, simply because it requires Radiance 18, and my character comes with 18 Radiance by default. Therefore, I didn't have to invest anything to use this catalyst, and also because it allows me to use the Radiant Weapon, which slightly buffs the damage output of the hammers just a little bit. It doesn't make a massive difference, but it helps. The Aura of Tenacity, it's useful, but it doesn't really decrease the damage received that much, and it drains you out of mana. The damage received is decreased by about 10%. Which is not a lot, because if you think about it, if you were to be hit by 500 damage, it only reduces that by 50 damage, which is not a lot. But it is what it is. It's the options I have with this build, considering that at level 110 and going for pure strength at 75 strength, there's not a lot you can do when it comes to spells. You could always go with a hybrid of strength and radiance, which I would recommend, but that's not the purpose of this build video. This is to come up with the strongest possible pure strength build, and this is what I came up with. As for the runes I'm using the ones that increase strength scaling, period. There are two runes that do this. One just slightly increases the strength scaling more than the other, and I'm going to tell you the difference in a minute when I warp to Grelinda. But as of right now, let me demonstrate how to go for the damage with this thing against everybody's favorite test subject. One more thing I have to mention is the lamp. As on my lamp, I'm currently using, as I've used before, the Umbral Eye of Loesh, which basically says that while charging a heavy attack, all damage is received as wither damage, and your posture cannot be broken. Regaining wither health by dealing damage is reduced. So you receive less wither health by dealing damage, but while charging a heavy attack, all damage is converted into wither damage, and posture cannot be broken. I've used this in a previous build video, so you know what to do. When you're charging R2, you are pretty much invulnerable. You just take wither damage, not actual damage. But there's a split second right there before the hammers hit that you are actually vulnerable, you actually take damage, and you have to be careful not to be one-shotted during that process, because if you take too much wither damage during the charging, you will then get hit and die instantly. But now, let's see what damage to expect from this. I'm just gonna charge my R2. I actually missed, which is a shame, but I'm gonna do it again, let him hit me, and there you go. One hit, and he is dead. Well, I'm gonna do it again, just in case you wanna check the number out. But this time, I'm gonna kill him using R1 attacks instead of the charge R2, because the charge R2 you already know how much damage to expect. Each hammer does around 2,000 damage, so that's 4,000 damage. There's no way he survives that. But as for the R1s, it does around 800 to 900 and something damage, and that's basically how it hits. It hits hard, it's great for PvE, I can say that. For PvE, it's a great build, very simple to use, it doesn't require a lot of shenanigans. But for PvP, that's where the major problem comes. You will have access to pretty much no spells to fight against ranged enemies, because using this build, the only ranged stuff you can come up with is the piercing light, and this is extremely easy to dodge. And pretty useless in PvP, in my opinion. It doesn't do a lot of damage, especially when using this catalyst, and especially when you only have 18 radiance. So it's not really a viable option for PvP fights. Also, the weapons themselves are quite slow and quite easy to dodge and parry. You have to play around with the timing of your swings. If you just spam R1, it's quite easy to dodge, but if instead you time your swings differently, like you do an R1, then you slow it, and then you finally do it, and then you do another one, it's a little harder to dodge them, because it will mess up the timing of your opponent's dodges. Still, when it hits, it does big amounts of damage, but mistake me not, you will very rarely one-shot people with this. The reason being, the damage that you get, it's nearly pure physical damage. Yes, you have an attack power of 1012, but as you can see by the distribution of the damage and the attack power, most of it comes from physical damage. So if you are fighting someone with heavy physical damage mitigation, with using heavy armor, that damage is going to be significantly reduced. As in, even if you buff it with the radiant weapon, you will be doing holy damage a bit more, but not that much more. So during PvP, it's also not the best of the options for that reason. But now to Grelinda and to my discovery that kind of shocked me, to be honest, is when you come to socket the runes on this weapon. Now, these heal vits is the best I can use for this build. It basically just says increases strength scaling. Now there's another rune that does exactly that, which is the active, as you can see on the bottom right screen. Increases strength scaling. The scaling of the active is slightly less than the heal vit, which is okay. But that's not where the problem is. This is a strength weapon, and therefore it has the rune shapes of strength-related runes. Or so you would think. There is one rune that should be the same shape as these runes, but it was made triangular shape for whatever reason, and that's this one, the Hex. This rune should be this shape, but it's triangle, and we all know that triangle tends to be related to agility stuff. As you can see, for example, this one increases physical damage while dual wielding. This is because agility weapons are normally more related to dual wielding than strength weapons. Strength weapons are more related to two-handing weapons. That's why there is the Gravix, which you can see there, increases physical damage while two-handing. So you can connect that these shaped runes are strength runes, and the triangle-shaped runes are agility runes. And for these ones are radiance related runes mostly, and the star-shaped are normally to do with inferno or elemental damage. But there's some sort of an harmony here, which you can easily identify what connects to what and what will be slottable in what weapon. Now, this one, unfortunately, the Hex, makes no sense, because it should have the shape of the Ausen, the Rook, the Austrix, things like that, because this is the one rune I would be using in the place of the Hilvits. But for whatever reason, it comes in the wrong shape, and that immensely affects the quality of this build. If this rune was to be reshaped to the actual shape it should be from the start, which is this one right here, this build would suffer a significant increase in damage output, because you would replace all Hilvits with this one, and you would get an even bigger scaling with strength. The crafter's essence, it is what it is. It just helps with the fact that I can then use the weapon without worrying about being too heavy while carrying two weapons. But it's this one that really makes the build, it reduces the potential of the build significantly, because this rune is the wrong shape. It should be that one. Anyway, as I demonstrated how much damage this does to a simple big enemy, you can only imagine how much more damage it would do if the right runes would be available for it. In any case, I have tried to use this build in a PvP, unfortunately not in PvE, because I don't have any more bosses left and I couldn't get anyone to summon me as co-op. But I will showcase a few examples of what to expect in PvP. Unfortunately, there's not going to be a lot of footage, because I gotta be honest, I lost way more duels using this build than ever before, simply because, as I said, if my enemies are using ranged attacks, such as in spells, both Radiance and Inferno, I don't really have a way to respond to that, and that makes me vulnerable in such duels. Or if there's two guys fighting me, I mean, as lovely as this is quite slow and doesn't really hit that hard, even with the buff, because, as I explained, the damage output is not that great, simply because it's pure physical damage. And you're gonna end up losing quite a lot of duels if you choose to use this in PvP. For PvE, absolutely recommend it. It's a good build, simple to use, easy to come across. Unfortunately, the hammer itself is only something you can get by late game, but it's the best scaling weapon when it comes to pure strength. I hope you guys enjoyed so far. Stay tuned for a few examples of PvP. Now, in this first example, I'm actually doing this guy, which, fair said, I invaded him a second time after this, and I got annihilated by the lag. I couldn't dodge any of his Inferno spells because the lag was so bad. And then he actually just did a running attack and I didn't even see it. But that's the problem with how the game works with a P2P connection. There's no point arguing about that. It is what it is. Lag is bound to happen. But in the first duel, the first time I found him, he was using these lovely fast-hitting swords buffed with all that fire. You can already see the lag spikes, but unfortunately not a lot I can do. You see these fire spells? Yeah, during the second round I didn't even see them. They just exploded under my feet without me being able to even notice they were there. Because I noticed the lag, I decided to just go with the charged R2, and that was it. But did you see how much damage he did compared to what I did with the charged R2? He nearly got me. As for this example, again, buffed weapon. My guess is that this guy might not be very experienced with PvP because his approach was not great. You know, but not everybody is programmed to play this game. But did you just see that lag spike right there? It's the state of the PvP. But he was just spamming R1, so I decided to keep my distance, give him a little bit of room. and then I got a big gap between me and him, and I just charged my R2, and there you go. That's it. GG. As for this guy, this is a good example of how much less damage the build will do when you run up to someone using heavy armor with heavy physical damage mitigation. Look at this guy, for example. He's got the advantage of having the ranged spells, which I don't. Honestly, as I said during the build explanation, the only thing for range that I have is the piercing light, and it's basically useless. So I wouldn't even bother trying it. I did some damage here, but did you notice that it did not kill him? It did around 300 damage per hit. Yeah, that's because we do not have the right runes on our weapons. Unfortunately, if we did, he would probably been killed by the R1 combination. Unfortunately, it's a design flaw, in my opinion. I don't think the devs realized that they got the wrong shape for that rune. Anyway, as you see, I hit him again 3 times, and he's still alive, because he's got quite a lot of physical damage mitigation, which also leads me to believe he must have quite a lot of vitality, because even with 300 hit damage, he survived 3 hits, so that means he's got more than 900 HP, which I don't know, at level 110 I find that very strange, but it is what it is. It's the state of the PvP. I go for the charged R2 again, and as usual it works. 920 damage, 1 shot, win. As for this invasion, I mean, this is the real definition of greed will get you killed. So as I approach this guy, I buff my weapon as usual. Before we even go forward, you will see the big difference when this weapon hits someone with much less physical defense. Take notice how much damage he will take from a single hit. 364, and the second one does 404. He also must be very low on HP, because 2 hits and he was dead, and he was at pretty much full health. Now here we go again. He chases me. I prepare the charged R2, but there was no need. I just did a single R1 and he was dead. GG. Now, this one is the perfect example of what will happen when you are fighting someone who has ranged attacks or spells or a bow or whatever using this build. When you are pure strength, you have access to some ranged attacks. You can use the javelins or the throwables. That's okay. But if you do that, you won't have access to the buffing spell. Which, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but the throwables are also very easy to dodge. So I don't classify them as being that useful for PvP. Now, I did cast a couple of spells just to kind of show, alright, I've got range too, but mine is trash, while you have the crossbow, which hits hard if you have the right build for it. Fortunately, he didn't, at least not that I could tell. But still, I did some damage. Did you see how much damage each hit did? Around 280? That's because his armor is pretty much the same as mine. It has high defense, high physical damage mitigation, which pretty much keeps him alive even after 2 and 3 hits. Which, with my previous builds, as you probably noticed, no one really survives more than 1 hit. If they do survive 1 hit, they are definitely not going to survive the second, and this one doesn't really keep up with that mentality. Simply because, as I said, being pure physical damage, the damage output is very, very limited, especially against people with heavy armor. Now, I recover some HP here. He goes back to using the crossbow, which forces me to dodge all the time. and then he dodges because both my weapons and his weapon are very slow, but he's got the crossbow to keep on putting me under pressure. I try to approach, then I get only one hit for 242. I don't think I've ever done a build that does this little damage, but that's the price to pay when you choose to go for a pure strength build. Guys, I can't stress this enough. If you go for PvE, this is actually a nice build. For PvP, there are much better options out there, especially, I mean, even on my own channel, you can find a variety of other builds that might outplay this one massively for PvP purposes. So yeah, he kept going on with his crossbow, having the advantage of having access to ranged attacks, while I don't. Lucky for me, as you saw, his build is not really designed about having the bow doing as much damage as possible. He was doing some damage, but nothing out of this world. Again, this just goes to show how much longer the fights are going to take, because I mean, the weapons don't hit that fast, they don't do that much damage. They should do more damage, but because, again, I can't stress enough how important it is that that rune being the wrong shape massively affects this build. Because if it had the right shape, I reckon I would be doing just the right amount of damage to kill people with 2 hits, which should be the case with a build like this. Anyway, GG, my friend, that was a very long duel. Well done. You survived longer than most. Now this guy, I mean, I have to demonstrate this as an example of how not to play PvP for everybody out there who follows the channel. The reason why I have to demonstrate this is that I invaded this guy, right? And for whatever reason, he didn't really fancy engaging me in fighting. He just wanted me to follow him up the ladder so he can then spam R1 on my face and get me killed. But take notice of this. Do you see how I actually could have attacked him straight away? I could have attacked him right there and then, but I didn't, because I wanted to play fair. So when he decided to go up the stairs, I kind of tried to send a message with the flares saying, come on buddy, just come down, let's fight. But he wasn't having none of it. Again, I normally do not have a problem with people's playstyle. You are free to play the game however you choose to play it. But when you adopt such tactics to try to cheese an invader, I find it that it's just sad. Again, if you want to do it, it's up to you. You are a free person to do it. But look at this guy. That's all he wanted. He wanted me to come upstairs so he could smash R1. To prove my point, I decided to go upstairs again, up the ladder, and for whatever reason, he dodged the wrong way. I tried to squash him, but I could have attacked him here, and I decided not to go. I just instead, listen, okay, he wants to go up the ladder, let him go up the ladder. I'll send him some flares again. But no, instead, I decided I really need to prove a point here, so I'm gonna go up the ladder one more time just to show that this guy is not interested in a fair fight. He just wants to spam R1 in this little tiny space as soon as I come up the ladder. Okay, if that's how you want to play it, my friend, that's fine, but don't moan or criticize me for what I am about to do. I am just going to wait. And the reason why I'm going to wait is we are in Umbral. And if we are in Umbral, we all know what happens after a few minutes when you stay in Umbral for too long. So I just decided to wait inside. I'm going to speed up now so you guys don't have to wait too long for what I decided to do. But I even decided, for the sake of this footage, to start pointing out at the meter for the Grim Reaper to show up, just to troll a little bit. I am sorry to keep you guys waiting, but if I speed up the video more than this, it just goes all blurry, and the frames per second just go crazy, so I had to just keep it at double the normal speed. If I go 4 times the normal speed, the whole thing just goes crazy. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of Share Factory, or maybe it's because of the game having FPS problems. But yeah, I decided, as long as just to give you guys a clue of what I'm doing, I'm even pointing out at the Grim Reaper countdown, and I decided to just laugh while I waited, because I don't know what he was thinking. But if you are playing as a host and by whatever reason you go into Humbrol, be mindful that all the invader has to do is wait. If he just does what I'm doing here, you will eventually get the Grim Reaper coming for you. So I decided to just go back and restart my laughing, and I buff my weapon just in case, because the Grim Reaper was just about to show up. So I decided to just come outside and start laughing because he was about to meet his end. Anyway guys, thank you for watching this build video. Give me a like and subscribe if you haven't just yet. Share with your friends, and I am more than happy to get rid of this build because it's definitely not my favorite. I'll see you in the next one. Cheerio!